Hi, Terry here. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 2 of Times Gone Tech. Today's subject is shooting stance and accuracy, or more correctly, shooting stance and my accuracy. Now, before I get started, you might notice something a little different about my carry style here. Yeah, that's because I got my trusty Colt 1860 Army, but I can't find the holster. Misplaced the holster. Can you believe that? So anyway, it's not really that important for this video. So this will do. A couple days ago, a friend of mine and I got to talking about shooting styles, and he was basically wanting to know my opinion about which shooting stance really was the best as far as accuracy goes. And I hated to have to tell him that I'm not the person to ask on that point. I'm not what I would call a proficient shooter by any stretch of the imagination. I can do a decent self-defense grouping within the 333 rule, 9 feet away. But when we start getting out past 10 feet, I can still hit the black and maybe close to the bullseye sometimes, usually. But I'm definitely not going to win any competitions. And at pushing 70, it's not likely that I'm ever going to. See, I'm what I like to generously refer to as a recreational shooter. Never belonged to a shooting club. Don't belong to any kind of a private ranges. We have a public range here, but I don't go very often. Um, I don't shoot on a regular basis. I've never participated in any kind of competitive shooting. I know enough to be, like I said, a decent self-defense group within the 333 rule. And, really, I'm of the opinion, and I might be wrong, but I'm of the opinion that most firearms owners, especially here in America, probably fit in that category. They buy a gun for self-defense or whatever reason, all right? And they learn just enough to be dangerous with it, often to the wrong people. And that's about as far as it goes. Now, I've gone a little farther than that, but I like to think so anyway. But I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. So that kind of got me to thinking, I've never really tried a lot of different shooting styles. I've pretty much only shot two. That would be the dueling stance and then the Weaver or isosceles triangle stance. And that's pretty much all I've ever used. So I also shoot left-handed because I'm left-handed. I've never really shot much right-handed. So what I'm going to do in this series of short videos is I'm going to try out a variety of these different stances. I've got 5 stances picked out that I'm going to try, and I'm going to try them both left-handed and right-handed and see if any of these stances really inherently has any significant effect, good or bad, on an average shooter. Because, see, the thing is, a good marksman could probably shoot a good group, say in this target, with any stance. That's because they practice them all and they're good at it. But what about people who don't practice them all and are maybe average down to low average, maybe high poor marksman? Well, let's find out. So the stances that I'm going to use are going to be the dueling stance, the one I'm the most familiar with, the Bisbee stance. I'll go through each of these, explain what they are. There are 2 point and shoot stances. One is what I call the John Wayne point and shoot, and that's from the hip, draw and shoot from the hip. The other one is more of a military style where you bring the gun up at eye level, point and shoot. And then the two-handed Weaver isosceles stance. And if we have time, I might throw in another one, which oddly enough, I've never actually tried. And that's what we might call the Wild Bill Hickok stance. And that's where you rest the gun barrel on your forearm and aim down it. I don't see this really being a big benefit, having the gun up this close to my face. So I don't know if I'm going to try it or not. It's tentatively on the table for now. We'll see. So in part 1, I'm going to fire 6 rounds using the dueling stance. clean and reload, and then 6 rounds using the Bisbee stance. And there's a reason why I'm not going to do all of these in one video. And that's because I don't want to get warmed up and shoot everything out here in one day. Otherwise, I might be shooting better, with the point and shoot or the two-handed stance, just because I've been shooting for an hour and I'm warmed up. But the thing is, in a self-defense type scenario, we're not going to have time to warm up. We're going to be drawing and shooting cold. So are any of these stances inherently better or not under those conditions? So you might see this taking place over several different days. Actually, you might see the time of day change. You might see my clothes change. That's just how we're going to do it. So let's get started. First, first is the dueling stance. Now, I'm not actually going to shoot this close. I am going to back up. I just wanted to get the target in the background here. Okay, dueling stance is when you stand with your body perpendicular or at right angles to the target, right? You put your non-shooting hand behind you to provide to present as small a target as possible to your enemy. Point up in the air, you cock as you bring it down, you sight down your arm, down the barrel, at the target, and you squeeze the trigger. Now, a version of that might be where you stand at about a 45-degree angle and you just bang. You just draw, point, and shoot. Okay. Bisbee style, little different. With the Bisbee style, come over this way, you bend both your elbow and your wrist a little. You kind of bring it up like this. Bend a little and sight down. Now, it's called the Bisbee stance because, as far as I know, it originated at a shooting club in England called the Bisbee Shooting Club. And you see a lot of drawings from the Old West, dime novels and journalism, newspapers and stuff, of a guy shooting like this, where he'll be holding up, well, change this because he'll be with his right hand. He'll be shooting at somebody like this. I'm not sure how many people actually used that stance, but I don't think people would have drawn them using it if they weren't using it, at least some people. And again, people like John Wesley Harding, they could hit it, they could shoot the eye out of a one-eyed jack, any stance. So I'm going to back off to about 50 feet. I'm going to fire 6 rounds from the dueling stance, clean, reload, come back for the Bisbee. Had a cap jam. It happens. Okay, so you'll see 4 holes, so you'll think, oh, well, I missed it with 2 shots. Actually, I didn't. These 2, this is 2. This is 1 shot here, and that's 1 shot there. So 1 hole here, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 1, who knows where it went. It didn't hit the boards behind it. It would have pushed them back. Could be one of these shots. Who knows? So anyway, there's 5 rounds, dueling stance, 50 feet. Okay, I am cleaned, reloaded, and back. This time I'm going to fire 6 rounds with the Bisbee stance. One thing I'd like to point out, though, is that what I'm using is my Pietta remake of the Colt 1860 Army in 44 caliber, black powder cap and ball revolver. I'm using 40 grains of my homemade Triple F black powder ball mill for 24-hour run, and a .451 round lead ball with a lube made of 3/4 lard and 1/4 beeswax. Oh, and a Remington number 10 cap. So I'm going to fire 6 rounds using the Bisbee stance from 50 feet at this same target. Well, this is interesting. Let's go have a look. It would seem that the Bisbee stance without some practice just is not my stance. 1, 2, 3, 4, presumably 5, 6 down here. So not a bad grouping, at least on 3 of them. Everything's here, but low and way to the right. And just so you'll know, I was aiming down here. I was aiming here on the first set and then aiming in the same place on this set. So why it's so far shifted over to the right and down, I don't know. But just inherently, the Bisbee stance for me is no good whatsoever. I'm better off, I think, using the dueling stance. But it could also be that the dueling stance is just what I've shot with more often over the years. And so that's just what I'm naturally better at it even without warming up. But I might come back and do this again at the end. In fact, I might repeat all of these twice just to see if it really makes any difference, because I've never fired a gun like that before, oddly enough. I've never used that shooting style. Okay, there it is, part 1. Shooting stance on my accuracy. So, I hope you enjoyed this short little video. If you did and you have not subscribed, please do so. It really helps me out a lot. If you have, thank you very much, and hope to see you next time.